Live for Speed, a game's title which tells you how to keep your priorities straight. A pillar of sim racing history from the golden age. In a world before Assetto Corsa, iRacing, or rFactor, Live for Speed set a standard for how an online-first racing sim could work. Gone were the days of a separate client manually typing in IP addresses and navigating forums for the latest password. Races were always running with a simple click to drive, something we take for granted now but was oh so revolutionary in its day. And the physics, complete with tire flex, flat spot, visual setup configuration, and impressive force feedback. Live for Speed was a simulator where you could feel the grip. Compared to the relative ice arenas that were Grand Prix Legends or NASCAR 2003, Live for Speed felt connected in its driving. Dancing on the edge of grip was not only possible, but enjoyable. Now, this is not going to be a full review of Live for Speed. In fact, I recommend checking out everyone's favorite sim racing professor, Neil Huysingveld's video about the sim from last year if you want a good overview on its physics and how it holds up today. I want to go through the latest update that came out for Live for Speed because this sim is still being updated, and actually, you can see at the bottom of the screen, it's really done by 3 different developers that have been working on this sim for years and years, and it's been a long time since something big, I would say, came out that really shook stuff up. There's been a lot of little developments to put VR in the sim and make it support triple screens and all the great stuff that you need to make it viable in a modern sense, but I'd say content-wise, it's been pretty stagnant over the years. Until now. I, like probably everybody that was on the internet and sim racing at the time, tried Live for Speed back in the day, probably around 2004 to 2005 or so. Before rFactor came, this was kind of the main online racing sim, at least for normal type car racing, and so it was fun to try out. But at the time I came in and tried a couple cars, I maybe did 1 or 2 online races, I can't really remember to be honest, and didn't ever really pick it up again. And the main reason for me was the content that was available in Live for Speed just wasn't what I personally am super interested in. We're looking here at the full suite of cars that comes with Live for Speed. I actually have what they call the S3 license, which is the top level license, unlocks all the tracks and variations and content. So this is the full list of cars, and it's pretty much been the same, as far as I know, for many, many years. It's a great selection of cars, and there's a few of these that are really fun to drive. But for myself, being a vintage racing fan, you're not seeing a lot here that might interest a vintage racing fan. I know they've got an older Mini here, which can be kind of fun. These Caterhams, they're kind of a classic car, but a modern take on a classic car. Been around for a long time and improved upon. These are definitely modern variations on it. A lot of fun to drive, and actually when I booted this up, I did try out some of the stock cars, which you saw throughout the intro, and had some good fun with it. I know kind of the draw for Live for Speed, especially in the 2000s, was the inclusion of the official BMW Sauber license. It was a big deal, if you think about it, for racing, for a Formula One team to partner with a sim, or at least release their content to it. Later came out that they also did the same with rFactor, and that's why you saw the BMW Sauber in rFactor as well. But Live for Speed, I believe, was first with it, and both had the Formula BMW as well as the BMW Sauber F1 car, which were fun to drive. I remember driving those around the time they came out around some of the tracks. And it was exciting to drive an actual car, because what you're seeing here for the rest of the cars that are included, although I called these 2 in the top right a Caterham and this one a Mini, they are all fictionalized, and overall there is very little real content that's included with Live for Speed. Most of it's based on reality, both the tracks and especially the cars, but very little of it is the actual real life thing, the big exception being the Formula BMW cars. But now that's all just about changed. You can see in the bottom right hand corner mods, and what has been launched for Live for Speed is vehicle modding. This is amazing, and I think kind of came out of nowhere. I was looking through the update blog on the Live for Speed site, and most of the patches up till now have just been fixes on things or a small feature here or there, and then seemingly out of nowhere they have added with version 0.7a car modding to Live for Speed, and it's fully integrated with the app. We're inside Live for Speed when you boot it up, and you can quickly navigate over to mods. They all download from within the game itself, so you don't have to do anything externally, and it's a place they've released tutorials and different applications alongside it for folks to make their own cars. Now, there's a lot of rules around it. The biggest one overall is you can't have any real cars included as a mod, but you can see there's some questionably close to real life looking things already on the first page of mods here, and there's already been a lot of vehicles created, so I can imagine that this is going to become a huge library of cars in a very short amount of time. they've been broken into 3 separate buckets. You do have approved mods, which I believe it's kind of a ranking system. The folks, the developers that make the game actually go through and try the different mods, make sure they work correctly, maybe they have a high enough rating and that they're plausible to the real life vehicle, and then they get marked as an approved mod. And those are the ones that show by default. There's quite a few cars in this, but if you jump over to show all mods, there's even more stuff, and there's a cheeseburger apparently that I hadn't seen up to this point. But there's almost every type of car that you could want, from road cars like a Ferrari here, through vintage vehicles, and even more than that. What caught my attention with this originally was this Grand Prix Legend 65 car, which is a fictional 1965 Formula car. It's being used in all the marketing and Live for Speed's release video for this, which you might have seen. So that caught my eye and made me want to try out what some of the mods might be like in Live for Speed, and just check out in general what else there was that existed. So when you decide there's a car that you want, all you have to do is click it and it downloads right away. And we're in the garage section for the Formula 65, or the Grand Prix Legend 65. And you can set up some of your own things here. You could make a paint scheme. I think you can actually do external paint schemes and import them and all that stuff. But there's the ability to just change the simple color of it. But I've gone through and just colorized a different color car for each of the different manufacturers to give some variety to it. Niels goes into it a lot more in his video, but the cool thing about Live for Speed, or one of the many cool things, they really put the physics on display, and you can change all your setup settings here in a very visual way and see the car react in real time to the setup changes. The sim has loaded at this point when you've entered the garage, so it's neat to play around with. You can of course do the famous drop of the car to see how it reacts to going over a bump, which is always fun to do. And I always liked how you could show just the suspension or the forces on the car. So here's my suspensions, kind of looking from the front or the back at the front rear tires. And as you adjust things, you can see how that looks in the suspension itself. For somebody that hasn't looked at an actual race car suspension or settings in general and knows what they do, I think a visual setup screen like this is a massive improvement over just the spreadsheet types that we see in a lot of sims. It adds a lot of context to what the adjustments you're doing are and what they might do to the car on the track. So this has always been a highlight for me in Live for Speed. Alright, and so rolling out of the pits here at Fern Bay, this track reminds me a little bit of Zandvoort, which is why I chose it for this. But the first thing I noticed about this car, and in LFS in general, are the sounds. They're not exactly pleasing to listen to, but as Niels talks about in his video, they are generated automatically by the game. So this game has its own sound generation engine, which allows you to input parameters and outputs a sound, which I think is incredible for modded cars. Allows somebody to make a mod and not have to worry about recording the audio for something, which is so cool. We'll come down the hill here. There's a blind chicane, which is so easy to get wrong. Slided through the final corner. So overall, driving in LFS doesn't feel as dated as I thought it would, and this car itself actually drives pretty well. We'll talk about a few of the mod cars. I'll go through a few of them. This one itself drives pretty respectably for a 60s F1 car. If you get up to a higher speed, there's no downforce, so you start sliding around a lot. It's set up to be pretty understeery by default, but it's quite pleasing to drive. I think I could imagine spending some time to get good with it and racing online with some other folks in it. Now, the thing I'm sure some folks have already written about it that sticks out quite a lot are the graphics. And this is a game originally from, I think it was released in 2003, if I'm not mistaken, and hasn't changed a ton visually. I think the tracks themselves look all right, but the design, especially the cars, are definitely aged. The steering wheel, the whole dash here, looks very old. Looks kind of on par with stock content for R Factor or something like that. So this isn't going to win any awards in the visual category. And so why, for some, why would this be something to do over all of the other sims that are out there. But driving it is quite a lot of fun, and I do think LFS are doing themselves a little bit of a disservice by having this be the poster child car for their new mod system, because although I'm fine with it and how the car looks, and I'm more just interested in kind of how they drive and race, this isn't the best looking of the modded cars. From what I understand, it's pretty tight parameters that you have to work in with creating the modded cars and the modded tools, from polygon counts and how you can do the texture resolutions and everything. Oh, take a terrible corner there. So it's not a lot to play around with. So it's definitely nothing on the skills of the modders themselves, more just how LFS have set this up. Definitely worth pointing out, because I know folks are going to see that right away. But if you've been around Live for Speed for any length of time, it's just so cool to play a car that's not one of the stock cars, or drive something that's not just a light formula car or a sedan for once. So out of the approved mods bucket, this is the other one that caught my eye. It's labeled as a vintage race car, the P166, which looks a lot like the P160, or a hybrid between the BRM P160 that raced from 71 through 74 and the 71 Ferrari 312B, which is one of my favorite Grand Prix cars of all time. So I was excited to see something like this. It's a 3-liter V8, and I think both the Ferrari and the BRM had a V12. So it's a little bit different than those, but kind of representative of that early 1970s F1. We've got some downforce going, but it's still kind of the classic cigar-shaped car. Outputs 443 horsepower at 10,000 RPM, so it's a pretty high rever and quite a lot more power than that 65 car I was driving. I do like the sound. I know they sound synthetic, but I like the sound of the engines. We'll roll out of the pits. We're at Westview, which is another one of the tracks that comes with Live for Speed. Instantly a lot more of that speed we get in this. A fun car. I've driven it just a little bit, not quite as much as the 65, but again, feels pretty representative of cars of this time. It's pretty easy to brake the downforce. It doesn't go on infinitely, but you can tell just by the cornering speed that it does have a little bit of downforce going on. Now, something I've found with all these cars is you do get to drive them for a few laps until the tires heat up, and to get an accurate picture of what they feel like, because the tire modeling in LFS is pretty sophisticated, especially for a sim from this era. But even compared to some of the other sims that are out there today, the tires do have to go through heating up. Brake heavy here. Oh, try not to run wide. There we go. Tires do have to heat up as I almost slide off the track, and you can flat spot tires like I said earlier, and they have a surface model over the whole tire that is all calculated. So car characteristics change quite a bit getting them heated up, but after you do, it's a lot of fun. As we come down into the slower stuff here, I'd expect to be able to kick out the rear end a bit. You can kind of do it, get a little sideways there, but it doesn't really like it as much. You get into some weird tank slappers sometimes with it. You know, now that I've been at it for a few minutes here, the car has come to me a little bit, learning how to drive it. I have to basically force it to understeer, or else you get into snappy situations like that. Possibly could be set up. Most definitely could tweak the setup here to make it a bit more drivable, but feels very pointy, which I wouldn't necessarily expect for a car from this era. Still fun though. The sensation of driving an LFS is not to be undersold. So out of the list of approved mods by the LFS team, those two Formula cars are really the two vintage, depends what you consider vintage, but the two vintage cars that are included there. But here's a Cobra called the Snake Z, 7-liter V8. I've driven the Cobra a ton in Assetto Corsa, so I'm interested to see how it compares. But this is from the not approved list, and you can judge for yourself the difference in quality between them. All right, so we're at a tiny little club circuit called Aston, which is fun to rip some cars around. And the thing you always notice about the Cobra is the engine note, and just give it a listen. It's very synthetic, like I said with the other car, but it is very cool that it's distinct as a V8 with a huge displacement as the Cobra would have. Over the top of this rise. Some pretty cool elevation changes on this circuit. This car definitely allows you to control a lot of the steering from the throttle application. It's such a short wheelbase with so much power. It really is a lesson in how to control the throttle. Cobras are always great around really twisty tracks because they're really fun to slide. So get into a little bit of a slide there. And you can really accurately control them once you get used to the throttle application and the short wheelbase. Alright, so I'm kind of overdriving the car right now, but based on the other Cobras I've driven in GT Legends, R Factor 2, Assetto Corsa, all of them, this one, it feels right on par with that. It drives like I would expect a Cobra to drive. I'm not going to go much deeper in the analysis than that, but you can see the distinction between these approved mods and then other ones, I think, is either they haven't gone through and approved more yet, or the mod authors maybe still working on the car. I think this one's pretty well done. Now, I've tried a few mods that weren't so well done, either in the graphics department or the physics department. There's a 1928 Grand Prix car floating out there that I did try a little bit. Way too much grip in it. Wasn't quite so fun. So your mileage may vary, but for something like this, just swing the rear end out. Yeah, this one's worth a few laps, at least. So here's the Tommy 28. I think it's a 1928 Grand Prix car. I have no idea what actual car it might be. I tried to take a look. It's definitely not a Bugatti or anything like that. Single seater, kind of reminds me of some of the Indy type cars from that time period, but the chassis itself is huge. So if anybody has an idea of what it's modeled after, or if it's totally fictional, definitely let me know. 5.2 liter inline 8. Pretty accurate engine for the time, 110 horsepower. This one's interesting. All right, so we're at the Aston Club circuit. We drove one of the other Aston circuits earlier. You can see all the BMW Petronas logos from the BMW Sauber partnership. This car is interesting, only revs to about 3,500 RPM. For some reason, by default, the setup for it only has 270 degrees steering rotation. So that's the one thing I changed and the only setup modification I've made so far on all the cars. We'll throttle up, it's a chicane up here. Try not to run wide. So it's a low-powered Grand Prix car from the 20s. Got some experience with those now, driving all of the great mods that have been coming out this year for Assetto Corsa with the Delange and the nice Cup of Teas group of 1923 cars. This doesn't feel so different, especially once you get the steering rotation sorted. Oh, slow down way too much there. Very slow to accelerate. It does seem like it has a little bit of grip. And this is one car I tried the other day when I first tried all this out. And it's been updated since then. And the other day it had way too much grip and power. It was just rocketing away. Felt very much like a car from the 40s or 50s instead of a car from the 20s. Much more accurate now. So this is one of those cars that isn't in the approved group. And maybe we'll get there at some point. But pretty interesting to race something like this and live for speed. Who could have imagined years ago that we'd be racing 1920s Grand Prix cars in live for speed? Yeah, despite the work and how it's been improved, I think there's still some work to do on this one. The steering feels very weird and super responsive. You should really have to be yanking the wheel around to drive something like this. Potentially something in this setup as well. Neat to see though that, amongst all these mods, they've really only been looking at the classic ones here. There's a decent amount of classic mods and a good variety of stuff. It's not all just 1960s cars and call that vintage. We've got 70s F1 car, we've got this 1920s car. I think anytime you see a variety of content like that, it's a good thing. A little rough and tumble on the turns, although this is great and it's been fun playing around with all the different mods, and that the 1965 car that LFS is kind of touting as the face of the modding, those are all cool, but there was one car that I saw was included as a mod that I just had to try out, and that's really why I'm making this video. I can't believe it, but somebody's made Fred Jones. If you don't know who Fred Jones is, he was your very patient and remarkable teammate in IndyCar Racing 1 and 2, and somebody's gone ahead and made what they call the Formula US 93, which is absolutely the car from IndyCar Racing 1, and they've done it up in both Fred Jones as well as John Smith livery. Now, the IndyCar is backwards on one side pod, and this isn't one of the approved mods, so it's probably still a work in progress, but it looks amazing. It looks exactly like the car I would imagine, or really what IndyCar 1 looked like in my head playing it that many years ago. I don't know, something about seeing something high poly that you've only ever seen in very small pixels just makes me so happy. So I was so excited to see this included as one of the mods, and definitely pushed me over the edge to get all this running so I could try this out. So rolling out of the pits at Rockingham, UK Speedway. This track doesn't exist anymore. It actually closed down pretty recently in 2018, but did host kart in 2001 and 2002 in the UK, one of the few ovals that existed outside of the United States, and such a shame that it's gone, but a track that's included in Live for Speed, and it's actually one of the only real tracks that's included. Apparently it's laser scanned, and so we have a preserved version of the circuit, which I think is so cool. It's definitely the nicest track that's in Live for Speed that I've seen, at least. We'll roll out of the pits here. I've got it set up on the oval layout. Like with all the tracks in Live for Speed, there's a bunch of different layouts, but just listen to this car as I shift up. opinion, this is what LFS should be leading with for modding. I think this is so cool to have such a classic car. At least to me, it's very, very much my nostalgia kicking in for IndyCar 1 and 2, but so cool to see. I think it's done pretty well. Out of all the cars I've driven during this video, I think this one might look the nicest out of all of them, and it's not even included in the approved mods category, but kudos to whoever thought to make this as one of the first cars, and so excited to see an Indy car from this time period. Now, I don't think the car is set up at all for an oval, or in fact I know it's not. The car itself has the short speedway or road course wings on it, but it is fun nevertheless to throw it around, and I so badly wanted to do an AI race or even an online race here in this car, but I couldn't find anything. Nobody's hosting an online server, and the AI unfortunately don't work with it here around this track. So in the configuration it's in, this car is maybe more at home in a place like this. This is South City, which is a series of street tracks that come with LFS. Pretty nice set of them actually, and I think highlights some of the physics with LFS, with the bumps in the road and things, how it reacts to the car. It definitely feels different than I've seen in a lot of other sims. This is a really fast section of the circuit. Blast down a hill. Be quite daring to do. Back out of it a little soon here. Yeah, I don't know exactly what it is about this car. It's something between the paint scheme being from IndyCar 1 and 2, and that I don't think I've ever really seen an early 90s IndyCar in a sim. It just absolutely is checking some boxes for me. I think I've had more fun with this car than any other that I've played with LFS, and this interests you at all, this type of racing, old IndyCar racing. I know I've been talking a lot about it lately, but this is kind of fun to throw around for an evening. So modding and Live for Speed. There's a lot of fun to be had here, and if you have Live for Speed and somehow you didn't know that this had happened, definitely go try it out. If you've never played Live for Speed before, I don't know if this alone is enough to get you into it, but I think I'm very eager to see where it all goes. Will they expand the options? What kind of cars will come out for this? And importantly for me, will they end up allowing track modding as well? Although the circuits that are included with LFS by default are all fairly nice, I think you've seen here, they're all good enough to throw a car around. Having modded circuits, being able to recreate real locations would definitely add a lot to this. I'm not sure what LFS is trying to do or try to be in 2021. I know there's a good contingent of folks out there that enjoy it, and I checked out quickly the servers online, and there's a ton of different things going on, just maybe not exactly the cars that I want to race. So if you do want to try out LFS, there are plenty of folks still playing it online. You can just as easily today as you could 10 years ago go join a race. You know, I wish something like this had come out 15 years ago for LFS, because I think that could have helped extend the life and make the sim a little more relevant overall. No complaints on the sim really, other than the content. So to see something like this be added in hopes that a lot of unique content could come out for it, like the IndyCar here, could be quite interesting. So I hope you enjoyed this little dive into Live for Speed modding. I think there's plenty to come over the next few weeks, and I'll definitely keep my eyes on things for any cars that pop up that might be interesting. But hopefully they continue to develop this, add more features, maybe allow some slightly higher resolution cars and things, and then, like I said, tracks I think would be the ultimate kicker. But so cool that they're doing it. It's cool to see a sim this old be constantly developed like this, and hopefully open some eyes that have never seen Live for Speed as to what it offers. So plenty more from me coming soon. Thank you for watching. This has been GP Laps, and I'll see you all again next time.